A win against USC on Saturday could launch Baylor women's basketball back into powerhouse status. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Nissan. Happy Friday to you. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas, which is back on the air weekdays 3 to 6 with myself on the Matt Mosley Show. And we are looking ahead at tomorrow's massive matchup in the Sweet 16. It's Baylor, it's USC, it's in Portland. Baylor already the underdogs in this one, but a little more evenly matched than you might think at first glance. And honestly, looking at how big this is, not just for the program, but for the head coach, Nikki Collin, this run could be monumental for her and for her career and for Baylor as a program. And then the breaking news just the other day that Jon Jakus is now the head coach at FAU after being Scott Drew's associate head coach here at Baylor. We're going to look at how that might change the Bears here in the very near future. But starting with the team formerly known as the Lady Bears, they are in Portland as we speak. They will take on USC tomorrow at 4:30 Central Time, and the Butterflies are already starting. Here we go. 5th seeded Baylor, top seed USC in the West region. This has the potential to be a fantastic matchup, and we kind of talked about how it's a homecoming for Baylor. You know, it's been 3 years since they've gotten to the Sweet 16, which is a long time around here with people of my generation. That's a long time. And how this team doesn't necessarily have a ton of experience winning big games in the NCAA tournament. And you look at big bad USC, number 1 seed, Juju Watkins, all of that, but they don't have experience in this moment either. It's kind of weird to think about, but it's true. I mean, USC is a great, historic powerhouse, but they have not been that way for a long time. In fact, this is the first Sweet 16 in 30 years for the Trojans. Like, this is not Cheryl Miller's Trojans. They're a very good team, but it's not like they come in here and this is just a walk in the park for them to be in the Sweet 16. This is a big deal. It's their first 1 seed since 86. So they don't play the role of Goliath anymore. But this SC team is terrifically talented. I will say that. And no disrespect to anybody else because it's a good supporting cast, but it does start and end with the freshman Juju Watkins. She can score just about anywhere on the court. She averages over 27 a game. She is probably the most gifted freshman I think we've seen in the women's game since Paige Beckers had that breakout season back in 2021, I believe. So she is the threat. It's easier said than done, but you have to neutralize Juju Watkins. And teams are trying to get her to go to her left. And again, all well and good until she kind of goes to her left, finds some space to shoot, and then you've done nothing. You haven't even made her do anything with her left hand. So Juju is the start and the end for this USC team. And they're not one that's going to absolutely torch you from 3. Their leading 3-point shooter only averages about 2.5 a game. So again, it's not like they're just out there all night shooting the lights out, got 4 or 5 shooters out there on the court. They're fine at it, but it's not necessarily their MO. What they have excelled in is their defense big time, especially as we've gone on in this tournament. They just knocked out Kansas, a team that did beat Baylor earlier this year. 73-55 was the final score in that one. 55 points is the lowest that Kansas has scored all season long. And that game, kind of like the Baylor-Virginia Tech game, that was tight in the second half. Towards the end of the third quarter, Kansas had it within 1. It was not a runaway for SC, but maybe that makes it more impressive when you see that they won by 18. So they really did. They pulled away in that second half. And obviously this USC team, they're battle tested. They finished second in the Pac-12 in the regular season, but then went on to beat the conference champion Stanford in the conference tournament championship. So this isn't just, oh, Juju Watkins is a good player, let's give them a 1 seed. Like, they are very deserved to be here. And it is, I think, fascinating to me, especially in the women's game, which lacked parity for so long, that we can have a matchup like this in the Sweet 16 where neither team is just used to being here every year. Like, I mean, 5-6 years ago, it used to be, whether it be Baylor or UConn or South Carolina, Notre Dame, like, there was always a huge mismatch in the Sweet 16 round. And looking at it this year, and this one specifically, even as a 1 versus a 5, it's not that big a difference. I mean, honestly, a couple years ago, you would have saw a 1 versus a 5, and that was like a 1 versus a 12 in the men's game. Like that. This is a good thing for women's college basketball, but it is very different than it used to be, which I think is fantastic. Baylor is 4.5-point dogs in this one. They were also underdogs against Virginia Tech, of course, and held on to win that one. We'll go over it in the next segment, kind of what Baylor needs to do, but getting past this USC defense is much easier said than done. By the way, I made it a big point to look at Virginia Tech splits, home, away, neutral, and they were 16-0 at home going into that Baylor game. Well, I looked at USC's. They are 5-0 this year on a neutral floor. 5-0 helps to win the conference tournament championship, to be 5-0 on a neutral floor. That is something to take into account. That typically shows a team's talent. That they're not just winning at home because they have a great home crowd behind them, but you always hear, oh, these two teams are great. Who would win on a neutral floor? USC tends to win on neutral floors, which shows that they are backing up their play, not just with good home support or anything like that. So USC, very deserved of this number 1 seed. Still the second best USC in the women's basketball tournament, but that's nothing to sneeze at. Let's look at how Baylor can actually attack this team and potentially come out with a surprise trip to the Elite 8 out of it. But first, I got to tell you about today's sponsor, and this episode is brought to you by the Spring Cleaning Champions. That's Manscaped. This season, make sure you go groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in the below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. After using Manscaped, I can finally say I have caught the spring fever. And this season's champ, no matter who's winning in Phoenix or the one where the women's are, it's the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This 5th-generation trimmer is going to feature 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads. One for just taking a little bit off the top, your standard one, and then a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Got LED spotlights to make sure, you want to make sure you have as much light as possible down there when you're doing that. And it's all waterproof. So you could do it in the shower, the bath, the ocean, wherever you can do it. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. Okay, that's 20% off and free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. Honestly, guys, nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants. This episode is also brought to you by Bettor Together. Okay, you guys know I'm getting into daily fantasy sports all the time. I know a bunch of you are into it too. Well, how about this? For those of you who are getting into it like me, or for those of you who want to just get better bragging rights, how about instead of doing it alone, you do it with your friends or people that aren't your friends, but you think are really good at betting? You can do that with Bettor Together. It's like your favorite daily fantasy sports platform, but with teamwork involved. Okay. It's a way for you to kind of ingratiate yourself into that world. It's a way to stay connected with friends. When you can't watch sports together in person, you can still stay connected. And it puts that group chat to the test and lets you prove that yours is the best. So for my friends in Texas here, download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using the promo code Locked On for a free $5 entry into any NCAA basketball contest. Play with me in a contest on, Friday, today, Saturday, Sunday, whichever. Remember the code Locked On, because winning is fun, sure, but it's better together. So we saw it from the USC side. Daunting task, no matter how you cut it for this Baylor team. Not that they haven't overcome daunting tasks this year. Not that they haven't overcome that this week, because they have against Virginia Tech. But this is a 1 seed. It's one that's been a top 10 team all year long, has one of the best players in the country in Juju Watkins. There was some luck with not having to face another one of the best players in the country in Liz Kitley. You're not going to get such a break this weekend, tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But there isn't a reason I could point to that says Baylor cannot win this game. They're underdogs, but I don't think there's a world where they cannot win this game. And the first thing you got to look at is the shooting, right? That was the big advantage in the first weekend for the Bears, was kind of like I was alluding to in that week leading up to it. They finally had the time to take a rest, kind of ice themselves up a little bit, and get back to the form and just shooting. And they only shot 28% from three in that Virginia Tech game. It was a lot better the game before, but they now have kind of hit that reset button. And even shooting, this was the most impressive part for me, even shooting just 28% from three, they were able to win a massive game on the road. I mean, how many times have we talked about that this year? That this team felt like they lived and died by the three, but it also felt like they had more in the arsenal than that. So while the numbers might still back that up for these games outside of the Virginia Tech matchup, that there are a feast or famine 3-point shooting team, we did see in the most important game of the season so far, they were able to adjust. They only turned the ball over 10 times, which how many times has that been an issue this year? Even in wins, 20 plus turnovers, just 10 in that game. You didn't give Virginia Tech any freebies. That's the big one to me. When you're shooting sub 30% from three, that you're able to only turn the ball over 10 times and, put up, basically go even with your opponent on rebounds, go +8 in the paint, when they have a big hole in the paint without Liz Kitley there. That was a team that was smart, that had adjusted and played efficiently, which is something that we have not seen a lot of this year. So all that to say, if they can play efficiently like that, which at this point, you've either learned it or you haven't. So if you play efficiently like that and you're able to shoot 40% from three, which is a good day, then this team can beat most teams out there. I'm not ready to say, bang, 40% they'll beat South Carolina, but they could beat a lot of teams out there. And Nikki Collins said it after the game against Virginia Tech that she wasn't even calling plays. They realized the mismatches out there, and they took advantage of it all night long. Of course, most of that being in the paint. USC, I don't know if you can exploit that many mismatches, but this is a Baylor team that's playing with a ton of confidence and a ton of intelligence going into this Sweet 16 matchup. And speaking of Nikki Collins, she has taken a lot of crap. Her couple of years here, 3 years here at Baylor. And it felt like a lot of it came after this 14-0 start to the season that kind of spiraled out, to which they finished, I think, third or fourth in the Big 12 this year. She got a lot of criticism. People were saying it looked like they had finally turned the corner again, but now they're wondering if she can coach. I'll be pretty clear with this. Nikki Collins can coach. Yeah. But I'll also be clear on this. she took over one of the toughest jobs in college basketball. And not that Baylor can't succeed. Obviously, we have seen the very opposite of that. It's been that they are too successful for another coach to come in and replace a Hall of Famer, and one that was not well known to women's college basketball fans because she coached in the WNBA. So, we're throwing all these names out there as fans over the Arizona coach was, and here comes Nikki Collin, and you're like, who? And then she wins the Big 12 in the first year. And then it was like, oh, well, she's still got Kim's players. She's got Nalissa Smith. And then it starts to go downhill. And now here she is winning a game on the road in the tournament, showing all Kim levels of fire, and now going into the Sweet 16. This game is massive for her and for this program. I'm not saying if she loses, she gets fired. This is not Friday Night Lights. But if you're able to take that step to the Elite Eight, where truly then all eyes are on you on a Monday in the Elite Eight in women's college basketball, then that's the sweet spot. Like that is where Kim Mulkey could get to automatically just by showing up and having her players put on Baylor jerseys. They were in the Elite Eight all the time. And we know that's not the standard right now. That's better than the standard, right? But if they are able to do that with this, let's be honest, scrappy team, it's not one that's loaded with top-end talent, first team all Big 12 players. They've got good players out there, but if they're able to make a run like this, it's because they're really well coached and good players. This is not a team with Brittany Griner or Kalani Brown or Odyssey Sims or Lauren Cox or Dee Dee Richards or any of those, or Nina Davis, Nia Johnson, none. But they're a good, scrappy team that has really molded around their coach and has gotten them to where they are right now. So if she's able to win this game and take out a higher seed in their home gym and then take out a 1 seed to go to the Elite Eight, that shuts a lot of people up. A lot. And I know that's not her reason for doing this, but that shuts a lot of people up. And we know in college basketball, so I would say specifically women's college basketball, even more so than men, a run like that does wonders for your recruiting. Because this might be tough to hear, but high school kids, they're really young. So a kid who's being recruited right now as a junior, who didn't start watching women's college basketball until high school, they don't know that Baylor's a powerhouse. Just like Juju Watkins maybe didn't know that USC was a powerhouse 30 years ago, right? Even for Baylor men, they didn't start seeing those 5-star guys come in until after they won a national championship. So I'm not saying, hey, you need to go out to win it all, but if Baylor goes back to the Elite Eight, then not only is that team there, 1 win away from the Final Four, but then you're starting to see the montages of all the championships. Then you're starting like the hype videos. You're starting to see the talking heads talk about Nikki Collin and Kim Mulkey. You're starting to see all of that to reinforce that, yeah, Baylor is back. They barely went anywhere, but they are back. And that's what a win does. Sweet 16 is a good accomplishment. Do not get me wrong. It's a heck of an accomplishment, especially for, I think, what we thought this team would do once the losing started. But an Elite Eight, that's a different story. That is, the eyes of the nation are upon you to potentially get to a Final Four, which is what everybody cares about. Everybody. So, no added pressure, but this is a massive game for Coach Nikki Collin, massive game for the program. Either way, they're headed in the right direction, no doubt, with a lot of players coming back next year. But a win here gets them on an even faster track towards saying, hey, we're really back here. All right, guys, you know what time it is. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. And I am talking about the Baylor women's basketball team once again. I mentioned it earlier in the week, but they are this week's Nissan Rogue. This team shocked the world by going into Blacksburg and beating Virginia Tech. And now they have the chance to do it again against number one USC up in Portland. Those would really, truly make this team legendary. Okay. Whether it's you, whether it's me, always we. Okay. Go Rogue. That's exactly what these Lady Bears have done here. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Pathfinder, or Armada and go find your next big adventure. You do that at shopnissanusa.com. Of course, the big news from the men's basketball team this week is that Jon Jakus, X's and O's genius, game scout extraordinaire, Gonzaga killer, and associate head coach for Baylor men's basketball, is now the head coach at FAU. That's Florida Atlantic University. For those of you who aren't familiar and didn't watch the Final Four back in 2023, the Owls were there in Houston, right? Houston, yeah. And he now becomes just the latest in a long line of Scott Drew assistants that are now head coaches, including one at North Florida, who someone mentioned in the comments for me that I didn't remember. And Jerome Tang, obviously at Kansas State, Grant McCasland at Texas Tech, Paul Mills at Wichita State through a great run at Oral Roberts. So just another notch to the belt in the Scott Drew coaching tree, which is great. I mean, obviously we're happy for Coach Jakus. We're happy that we can kind of brag on this Scott Drew coaching tree, but it stings as a Baylor fan. Not necessarily of the decision that Jakus made, just the fact that he won't be here. Because I cannot understate how instrumental Jon Jakus was in getting Baylor to that next level, from being a scrappy, pretty good team that usually makes the tournament to, holy crap, elite, top 5, top 1, national championship, Big 12 championship kind of level. Jakus was huge in that. And like his finest hour is the scout that he put together against his old team, Gonzaga. And that led to literally Baylor's finest hour, winning the national championship and knocking off, like manhandling a team that many said could not be beaten. Jakus has a huge, we have a huge debt of gratitude for that to Jakus. And obviously a great X's and O's guy. You saw it in the Our Time documentary on ESPN Plus, just how much he works with the guards specifically. And like that was the difference, was they had elite guard play. You know, back in the day, they had some good ones, right? Pierre Jackson and Lace Dunn and Brady Heslop and those guys, and Tweedy. But then all of a sudden you had Jared Butler as an All-American, Davion Mitchell as an All-American. Bringing in a guy like Maceo Teague from UNC Wilmington that nobody had heard of and turning him into a national champion. James Akinjo gets the third shot, gets to be an All-American. Adam Flagler sits on the bench for 2 years and becomes an All-American under Jakus. Like, he was humongous in that and big on the recruiting trail. I mean, I talked about it earlier in the show, the shift to those 5-star guys for the men's team, 4 and 5 stars. I'm talking Kendall Brown, Eve Misi, Jacoby Walter, Keontae George. Those were all Jon Jakus. And found guys like Jeremy Sohan and Miro Little. Sohan becomes a lottery pick. Miro Little is going to be a big rotational piece for the Bears next year. He found those guys. And he is damn good out there on that recruiting trail. So, will this hurt Baylor? Yes. Yes, it will. Will it sink Baylor? Will it mean that they're not a player in the Big 12 anymore? I don't think so. Because Scott Drew always brings in good assistants too. We could have said that about McCasland or Paul Mills, and then he brought in Jon Jakus, and he still got Alvin Brooks III there, and Ty Beard and Bill Peterson, who's been with him forever. But But yes, this hurts Baylor big time. And I saw someone in the live we did after the news broke put in the comments, and it was actually not a bad point of we talk about trying to get away from one and dones a little bit. Could this actually help in that? Because he was so good at bringing one and dones in. So in a weird backwards way, yeah, it could help you. You probably start to recruit differently when you have a different recruiter out there. So I'm really interested to see where they go. Someone had dropped the name King McClure. King has done very well in the media circles. So I don't know if he leaves for coaching, but if that's something he's interested in, he is a great basketball mind on TV. I'll say that. So I wouldn't mind that. It's not a guy who steps in and becomes an associate head coach, but probably a GA. But Jonathan Chalmachachua, anyone? Would love to see him stay on the staff. I think there's coaching in his future. But yes, this does hurt in at least the short term to not have Jon Jakus there. And for as much as we talk about how tough it is to replace your roster every year with guys who aren't playing together, that is the end all be all for sure. But it also doesn't help to lose assistants all the time. And Baylor's may do. But since the national championship, you have lost two of your big three assistants. Alvin Brooks III, the only one that stuck around. Jon Jakus gone. Jerome Tang gone. Like that is really difficult for these guys who have been there, Tang, the case of Tang, 20 years. But Jakus had been here for 7 years and had seen them go from a plucky Sweet 16 team in 2017 to a national championship team, to a team that now has the expectations to be a Final Four national championship type of team. So yeah, this stinks. Wish them all the best at FAU. FAU's getting a great one, but this is tough for Baylor. Anyway, this weekend is all about the ladies going on to take on USC. Let me know what you think about this game. Drop your game predictions down in the comments below and what you think this means for Nikki Collin and for the program, and what you think this will mean for, well, not this, but Jon Jakus leaving means for the men's basketball team. Be sure to drop that down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back with a recap on your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.